Nagrik is a small think tank. We're based out of Dehradun. And we bring focus on voices and stories from small cities, and we aim to bring them to the mainstream. We also focus on creating more pathways where citizens can be more influential in policymaking. Today, we're here to talk about climate change in the context of small cities. While none of us here are experts on climate change, when we were looking at all that is going on around us, we found that the discourse was so focused on larger cities. And when you're talking about air, it was Delhi. When we were talking about rising sea rise, it was Mumbai and Chennai and so on and so forth. So over the last few months, we've been focusing on trying to understand the impact of climate change, as well as the impact that small cities have on climate change. And that is what the series is about. That today we're going to launch two articles in the series, one in which we're going to contextualize small cities in the context of climate change. And the second is where we're talking about heat waves and rising temperatures. In addition to the release of these reports, we have a great panel set up for us today, where we're going to talk about heat waves. So we're going to, we have an hour and a half with us, and we'll start with a short presentation on our report, followed by a panel discussion. Over to you, Nimisha.
Welcome all. Climate change is no longer a myth. Instead, it has now become widespread, rapid, and intense. Earth's climate has always changed naturally in the past, but there is unquestionable evidence that modern climate change is driven by global warming, which is a product of human activity. Climate change has diverse impacts that are manifesting in almost every city in the world. However, the discussion around climate change impacts is largely limited to bigger cities, leaving out the smaller ones that are equally suffering. These cities are often overlooked in the broader discourse on climate change policy and action. The limited amount of knowledge production, climate data monitoring, and availability also adds to this gap in discussion. With this series, we intend to, one, shift the focus on the challenges small and mid-sized cities are facing with respect to climate change. Second, enhance citizens' understanding regarding the role of such cities in climate change. And thirdly, identify the knowledge gaps that exist so that they can be bridged to design and plan for city-specific response. This series is divided into 4 parts. Part 1 sets the context as to what is the relationship between cities and climate change. The other 3 parts dive deep into some of the major climate change impacts small cities are facing in India. Part 1 serves as an explainer and focuses on the type of climate change impacts cities face, as well as the dual role cities play in climate change. City systems are identified as one of the key systems that generate almost 90% of GHG emissions and hence act as contributors to climate change. As sufferers, cities face varied impacts that put the residents at risk. For example, in 2022, just 10 climate disasters resulted in damages of more than $3 billion. It is also reported that 80% of 998 cities globally are experiencing at least one of the climate disaster. Moving on to the state of Indian cities, India is home to 43 of 100 most vulnerable cities in the world. Moreover, 13 of the world's top 20 risk locations are in India, which includes small and mid-sized cities like Agra and Kanpur. Similarly, when it comes to the role of Indian cities in climate change as contributors, they emit 44% of country's total carbon emissions. When it comes to the role of sufferers, over 75% of India's districts are hotspots for extreme climate events like floods, droughts, and cyclones. This indicates the increasing vulnerability of Indian cities in the face of climate change. Part 1 sets the context, while Part 2 focuses on one of the major climate change impacts cities are facing today, the rise in temperature and increased heat waves. This part looks at the state of India's small and mid-sized cities with respect to facing record-breaking temperatures, rise in annual average temperature, frequent heat waves, weather monitoring and data availability, vulnerability to secondary impacts like droughts and water stress, and city-level actions to combat extreme heat. This part also includes Chandigarh as the case study to understand the impact and cause of rise in temperature in the city. It is observed that the share of small and mid-sized cities in facing the record-breaking high temperatures is increasing. For example, in 2023, 96 cities faced highest maximum temperature, of which only one was a big city. In our analysis, we observed that about 134 small and mid-sized cities have seen a rise of over 9 degrees Celsius in their annual average maximum temperature. For Srinagar and Patiala, this rise is over 14 degrees and 15 degrees respectively. Similarly, the smaller cities hold a larger share in temperature rise of above 5 degrees Celsius and 10 degrees Celsius. A study by IMD reveals that the duration of heat waves in India has increased by 2.5 days from 1961 to 2021 due to global warming, which has affected the residents. It is observed that the smaller cities hold a significant share in this increase. For example, Shimla has seen over 183% rise in the number of days with high temperatures, which has not only resulted in the temperature rise, but also water stress in the city. We have analyzed the share of small and mid-sized cities with respect to weather monitoring, continuous data availability, focused research studies, and heat action plans. We find that smaller cities have limited share in weather monitoring network, adequate weather-related data, and research studies. They do have a larger share in heat action plans. However, the status of implementation of these plans is unclear. Moving on to city-level actions. Heat action plans prescribe some mitigation measures like cool roofs, early warnings, community outreach that cities can adopt to combat extreme heat. For example, Telangana has launched the cool roof policy to drive statewide adoption of cool roofs to make the state heat resilient. Similarly, in Rajkot, innovative design features like reflective roofs have been utilized in the housing project under PMAY to keep the indoors cool. To understand the cause and impact of rise in temperature, we have looked at Chandigarh, the city which is getting hotter and hotter by the decade, as a case study. It is observed that the city has witnessed a rise of 1.78 degrees Celsius in its average minimum temperature since 1950. As a result, the city has now become an urban heat island. Reduction in forest cover, increased use of private vehicles, increased concretization are some of the major causes of this climate change impact. The insights from the report highlights some of the gaps that smaller cities are facing with regards to rise in temperature and heat waves. The areas of further inquiry include the role of community, technology, and NGOs, which can potentially bridge this gap. Thank you. Now I request Yutika to introduce the panelists and take the session forward.
Thanks, Nimisha. So the report, like Nimisha outlined, is it's very detailed and will be online on our website after the panel discussion. We have an eclectic panel which is going to talk about the various impacts of heat on smaller cities. Let me briefly introduce to you the panelists. First, let me introduce to you Professor Anjana Vyas. Professor Anjana Vyas is a distinguished academic who was with CEPT University for 40 years in Ahmedabad. She specializes in urban planning and focuses on environmental challenges such as urban heat and temperature rise. Her expertise extends to remote sensing, geographic information systems, and data science, which she has applied to study the impacts of urbanization and urban heat island effect and other temperature-related issues, urban issues. Thank you so much, ma'am. I know there is a lot more. You're also a fellow at the Indian Society of Geomatics and Indian Society of Remote Sensing. And it's very hard to compress 40 years and more of experience in like a minute. But I'm sure you'll speak from that experience in this panel. We also have Neetu Jain. Neetu Jain is the managing director and a visionary green techno entrepreneur who is focused on addressing global warming and sustainable industrial growth. Her company, Panache, is known for its innovative cooling and waterproofing treatments that contribute significantly to energy conservation and combating global warming. Recently, she played an instrumental role in releasing the policy of cold roof for Telangana. Neetu Jain's commitment to creating sustainable societies is evident in her mission to establish 100 sustainable societies over the next 5 years. Welcome, ma'am. We also have Mr. Gilani, who isn't here yet. He'll be joining us shortly. He's an Ashoka Fellow and the Managing Director at Sea Balance. Mr. Vivek Gilani and his Sea Balance team has been engaged in installing low-cost, low-tech cooling solutions to help mitigate the effects of rising temperatures, particularly in slum areas. Vivek is also the co-founder of India's first carbon footprint calculation and reduction movement, the NO2CO2 project, and has developed India-specific carbon ERP tools such as Climatonomics platform. I think Alpana Mitra ma'am, who is the general manager at the Rajkot Rajpath Limited and SPV under the Rajkot Municipal Corporation. Unfortunately, her duties at the corporation have kept her busy. Maybe she'll be able to join us later. But this is the norm in it's understandable given the government responsibilities. We have Mr. Tarun Sharma, who will be the moderator for this panel discussion. He is the co-founder of Nagrikal and comes with a lot of background in urban policy and has done and kind of shepherds our research efforts and keeps us all focused towards our goals on small cities. Over to you, Tarun.
Thanks a lot, Yutika, and thanks, Nimisha, for that wonderful presentation. And again, a warm welcome to our esteemed panelists, as well as the various participants who have shown interest in such a hot topic, literally. And I will begin by saying that we have a very distinguished panel. And as I sit in this really hot room of Dehradun, which has a terracotta painted roof, we have in this panel and in this room people who can advise very simple and effective solutions to beat the heat in my house. We don't have people who can only just tell us about how to beat the heat in one's individual house, but also in communities. And we have Neetu Jain, who's been a tech entrepreneur and has been manufacturing solutions which can help all of us in such scenarios. And as Yutika mentioned, and Nimisha also referred to the Telangana Cool Roof Policy, that she was instrumental in designing the cool roof policy for the state of Telangana. And I should mention that even though Ms. Alpana Mitra may not be able to join us, and she said that her duties beckon her, she did in the last minute ask a person to join. I'm not going to call him on the spot because he was not given any lead time to prepare. But Mr. Nilesh, feel free to join in when we open the conversation at that point about the vast experience that you had in designing the heat resilience strategies in the city of Rajkot. So Nilesh is also here as a participant who's worked in the past with Rajkot Municipal Corporation through ICLI and GIZ. And Vivek will join us at around 4. He is the founder of Sea Balance, and he also runs another program right now, which is the Informed Water Project, and he's attending a press conference right now. And along with that, we have somebody whose work has been critical to our entire nation's understanding of how cities and heat interact. She has expanded the knowledge on collection, distribution, analysis, processing, and presentation, uh, which can help make sense of a lot of this geographic data and information. So Professor Anjana Vyas is with us. So Yutika introduced her, and she's been shedding light on all of this, so that we know where we can look for solutions, finding evidence around it. So it has been, she's been instrumental in pioneering multiple studies to understand urban heat in various city contexts and also inform state and national level policy making. So with that, I invite, so the format that we have is that we will have brief opening comments, initial comments or presentations by our esteemed panelists. And then we will have a free-flowing conversation where we'll pose some questions to our panelists, and while they talk about those answers, they will try to enlighten us with their vast experience in understanding this complex issue of urban heat that I'm sure that all of us face. I'm sure that all of us sitting in different places where we are experiencing a lot more heat than our fathers, our parents, and grandparents experienced at the same age in a different era. And with that, I will first invite Professor Anjana Vyas. If you could start, ma'am, and I don't know if you have a presentation, you can share screen. Welcome, Professor Vyas.
Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. After you talk to me, I have prepared some slides. So let me just.
Sure.
So thank you very much, Mr. Tarun and the whole of the team. And when you wrote me the title, "Heat on the Horizon," I was really very much, happy to see that these things are happening when actual temperature is rising and everyone is talking about not today's and yesterday's and tomorrow's temperature, but it is the time distance with 10 years, 20 years, and future what is happening, like glaciers are melting and so many news we are reading these days. And that is the right time you have written this, that heat on horizons. It was scary as well, though the title is very nice, but scary sometimes to see that, okay, yeah, it's on horizon, it may reach to us any point of time and all. So as you have rightly put up, that my experience is with respect to use of remote sensing and geospatial technology, and with specific things to pollution as well as urban heat island. So I'll try to do so because I know that you are organization working with so much of data and so much of compilation of things from the small and medium towns. So I didn't do that, but I just pick it up something to share some of work and some of my ideas, and maybe future interest go to that. Prior to that, I would just like to look across that what are the towns, when we talk about small and medium towns, and we see the statistics of those from 2001 and 2011, just a previous decade, because we are not yet having any of the database, we see that they are almost double. 6,500, now there are 11,000 plus towns are there. And if we see the statutory town, which are municipal corporation, municipality, municipal committees, are increasing. But what most important is census towns, and that is what is your target area as well, because these municipal towns are like, little less than 5,000 population to 1 lakh population, or little more than that. So those are all we concern about it. And if we see the statistics here, if we see the percentage of the respective year. Census towns are earlier like 21%. Now you see it is 34% of. But if you see the number, it is much more. So the statutory towns are increasing at the decreasing rate of growth, but census towns are really increasing. And that is what is our concern. And we need to look into this aspect of that. So I mean, what all we know about the small and medium towns, and many of us are researcher and doing a lot of research on that. And there are 4 or 5 major limitations of those or constraint. One is a planning constraint, that is a land use planning. Uh, Land use planning plays very important role both in the city economy, city sustainability, as well as the city environment. Living standard, living quality, all of those things depends upon the land use planning, which the expertise are limited with the small and medium town. Infrastructure planning, on the contrary, also adding to that is implementation and management of those resources are not up to the mark or whatever required, or if resources are there, they are underutilization. Infrastructure is a problem. Financing is again a major problem, because if you have finance, if local body has a finance, they can spend and they can create certain kind of required environment, but that is what is not there, and they are more or less dependent upon the grants, and so they are all very little and meager and all sorts of things. Again, staffing, the technical personnel are much lesser. In Gujarat state, I think in 2000, year 2000, the cadre has been I think amended, and that is only from there on we have class 2 and class 3 officer as a chief officer of the municipalities and small and medium towns. And prior to that, it was just I mean, somebody is just getting appointed and all. So now things are becoming little more clear, little more according to the act or government regulations and other things. Governance, we have a political will, decision making processes, all of those things are actually needed. If I can make those different things into the different aspect, one is the problem of climate change, and another one is the factors affecting for increase in the urban temperature. So climate change, when we are talking about reading literature and understanding about it, is first and foremost impact. We are listening to Bangalore these days on water scarcity is the major problem which we are raising. Small towns are having agricultural impact because they need irrigation, but they also need to survive, and then having the crop production increase over time. Migration is more or less, we find that small and medium towns are having out migration much more. Infrastructure vulnerability, community health, and adaptation efforts are also some of those impact. But if we see what are the which factors are affecting for the hiking or increasing of the urban temperature are, as I told you, that urbanization and land cover. We are reducing the open spaces and we have more and more of the buildings coming up. Let building comes up because people have to live, but what is the built environment? What is the urban design? Those things we need to be really consider, and we need to keep in mind ourselves to see to that. We are just paving the street, paving the houses, paving the bungalows, paving the everything, and we are not getting the, we are increasing the reflective surfaces. We don't have the urban canyons where we need to have certain kind of building rules and regulation, though we have, but they are not enough in terms of the climate mitigation part or resilient part that we need to be looked into. And obviously transportation, energy, expansion of the use of the energy consumption, etc., are also some of the key factors which we need to be concerned about it. We are not forgetting year 2010, 2015 in India, Pakistan and around, but also recently in Europe 2022, where there was a heat wave and killed several thousands of people. And in 2010, when Ahmedabad also faced the heat wave, at that time, the world's first heat action plan was prepared, and that is continuously getting prepared with the help of an NGO as well. look forward 1818, like, and, we are human being, and we are affecting with everything which is changing across us, and our living livelihood, as well as the temperature and the comfort zone. And that is those years, the first heat island phenomena was documented, and then on we see that we are concerned about a lot of things, of not only documentation but also trying to find out the strategies, trying to find out the kind of suggestive measures, and the integrated plan for that aspect of that. So built environment are looking forward for the, I mean, the studies are getting onto the temperature, energy consumption, maybe pollution, use of material, waste material, agriculture development, biodiversity, etc., are being really concerned about, I think, last couple of decades, and we are just viewing so many research papers also coming out from those uh, studies taken up by the from the uh, comparative analysis or large cities and all. Yes, you are very right, Mr. Tarun, that very less number of small and medium towns are being addressed, and that's what is the concern for us, that they are weak, they are meager, everything we know about it, but then weak and meager, we cannot continue living like that. We should make it more empowered with some kind of technology, some kind of resources, and some kind of implementation of that. And hence one we can look from the perspective of urban heat island. So I'm talking island is what is that the area where we have higher temperature than the surrounding area. If we say city, then maybe the rural area. If we say the neighborhood, then the next neighborhood, or and these are all impacting on the land use and transportation and other aspect of even resources utilization of the concrete, asphalt, glass. We know that they are having higher radiation, but we see that the changes are happening. Earlier, we used to live in 14 inches wall, by brick wall, and now it is 9 inches. Now it is coming 4.5 inches, and then we are now having only glass doors, glass walls. Okay, so what are we doing? We are aesthetically trying to bring us into a very visually nice perspective, but we are also creating some kind of grave for us, that it is also emitting a lot of temperature, and then it is causing us a lot of problems. It is not that we are just few people or concerned about the climate change, or maybe the temperature rise or anything. Even government of India, many ministries are also considering that in a piecemeal basis, or in a program basis, or in a project basis as well. Ministry of Environment and Forest, Urban Development, and Renewable Energy, Ministry of Power. A national building code is also coming up, and I think they are also revising certain things. Institutionalization efforts are also there. Institution like CEPT, theory, and other institution, UNDP, and all of those are looking forward for the aspects of whatever I have written in the graph, but then it is also getting into the green building rating system. So what probably one of our speakers may talk about that most importantly. So what is essential as such, we talk about it. So first of all, we have to understand what is the heat, urban heat, and how we can identify that. Then we also need to find out that what are the proper strategies for that. I mean, somebody talk about cool roof or cool pavement, green roof, or maybe conservation of the water body, greening the city. Per capita green space in India is totally, I mean, not comparable with the UNDP criteria. Even city level also, we may find there may be open spaces, but not the green spaces. And again, that also creates uh, a lot of problems with respect to the heat. Okay, then we also need to see with respect to the planning tools and techniques, how planning tools and techniques can be implemented for the reducing this kind of and increasing the cooling effect is one more aspect of that. Uh, Climate change action plans are many. we see that in internationally they are very widely talked about it, but then how to implement and at a local level how it can be really made, it is a local body's issue and problems, the support of respective state government or the national government. There is also one more thing, and which is my key aspect, is the advanced data and modeling technique, where you use remote sensing, you use geographical information system, you develop the numerical models and techniques, and to identify certain kind of that parameters like normalized deviation, differential vegetation index, land use land cover, and LST type uh, things like that. So here I can show you some area, like how we do the understand about this. The below are the map of showing you the built up area. Okay, land use land cover, but largely it is a built up area. So red color shows the buildings which are increasing and buildings which are getting higher and higher. Now we say that land surface temperature is a central thing, that as you see that the built up area is increasing, the land surface temperature is also increasing. Green is the cooler aspect, and red is the higher aspect. And if we see over period of time of 2000, 2008, 16 and 23 are there. What is NDVI? What I told you is the normalized differential vegetation index, which actually tell us to see from the perspective of barren land, then grassland, shrubs, sparse vegetation, and dense vegetation. If you see the variations in the green will let us know that darker is the vegetation, darker is the green space is giving us the dense vegetation, etc. So what we use in remote sensing and using of the satellite imagery is try to create a correlation and try to understand that what is the culprit or what is the real relationship. Like in statistically we say that what is the R square value, and we try to identify that what has a positive relationship persists, and also the inverse relationship, and then we can go to the root cause of the problem, and then we can try to identify the strategies for that. We are also looking from the pollutant, because pollution is also one of the culprit which is creating the urban heat. Okay, and so there are several satellite imagery. I'm not showing you all details about what is the resolution and when it started and how many years we are getting that. If somebody is interested, I can share with them. But then we know that these are the satellites which are available for us to identify ozone or SOx, NOx, aerosol, and H2O. All those things we are able to map it, view it, and currently we are also in one of the studies we are doing for the larger part of the city at a little macro level, not at a much micro level of those things. Once we come to understanding about all of those things, just try to compile certain general suggestions. There are certain heat plans, and there are some challenges which we need to address across this. Many of us know about it. I don't need to talk about that. But basically, what we need to do is surface. The surface which is emitting the heat, and how we can protect that, or try to see that how those heat we can reduce to emit, and then we can have a little bit of cooling impact or those things. For that purpose, we need to look into the urban form, the material use, and the vegetation coverage. If we talk about this, then we have, if we overlap all those three things, then we are lowering the urban heat island impact, where we see the urban form, which has a street orientation, street length, urban canyon, and water bodies. Okay, so those are the aspects we need to look from the perspective of that. Materials, the cool roof material, then the pervious, impervious, we have to see that what should be the ratio and how we can reduce that impervious material to use for the purpose of paving or any other thing, and vegetation coverage with canopy and with the grassland. So each of the type of those we can try and understand. Showing you a little bit of those things due to time constraint. I'm just trying to show you certain things. Number one is that urban planning tool. how we can use this planning tool. So city is having north, south, east, west, streets are there, and which type of street and the orientation, that is street orientation and wind direction, we try to see for the uh, uh, respective town, respective city, and then try to see that what is those and where we can do the plantation. So that is one of those things. Another one I talked about, urban canyon. Urban canyon is the one what you can see in the figure, is something which we try to see that where we have east-west street and where HW ratios are higher, okay, height width ratio, then how we can plant the a tree with the canopy, and then how when we have the lesser ratio, how we can even use the center part of the place and then have a tree plantation to do that, and which will allow a couple of degree temperature reduction in a way. You see that is in the pictorial form that you have, we have different typology of street, wide street and the narrow streets, and we see that how those plantation are there, but plantation can be placed like in the wider street. We can also have the plantation with into the center part of it. Considering that street plantation, if we see on the first picture where we saw the narrow internal road, and if we have those two sides of the plantation, what happens is that we get lesser kind of a heat generation issue. But what happens is, because the across the trees we do have the buildings and other walls and other thing, that and the trees, so the temperature what gathers there, it in the night time the emissivity element is little lesser in this place, and hence sometimes this kind of narrow street with even the good uh, uh, trees planted may have also some level of heat island concept during the night time. Wider road we can also consider with respect to that, okay, we can have the lush foliage and then both sides of the road, and we can have the sky view so that the heat emissivity can also be released during the night time, and so we get the cooler environment at the night time. These are all the studies which are not only gathered as a sources, but also it has been um, tested at different places, and we also tested some of these points at some particular location. A green roof is another thing where we have extensive green roof and intensive green roof. Extensive green roofs are like thin layer of vegetation, which does not require too much of taking care and other things. Where in intensive green roofs are maybe parks or maybe more, thicker trees and other things, we may require good watering and periodic irrigation systems and all of those things. But these are also some of those things which helps larger building, larger open spaces to cover with that and can help us into that. Very important thing is also um, uh, cool roof. Cool roof, recently we have been observing that solar panels are now posted at many places. Government is using open spaces, Gochar land and other areas, but wherever it is on the buildings, on the domestic building or residential, the hospitals or institutional building where large roofs are available, so what happens is that they absorb sun rays and convert into the energy. That is one of the benefit we are getting. What it also helps is into trap this with respect to the radiation. And hence the building on which, rooftop on which the solar panels are fixed up, they reduce the heat about quite a large percentage, and within the in as a temperature in the surface temperature and atmospheric temperature, wherein if we look into the roof, it is under the roof, the rooms are getting 2 degree to 5 degree temperature reduction when the solar panels are instituted. So cool roof is also important with respect to not only solar panel, but we can also use terracotta tiles or maybe highly reflective tiles, or we even sometimes paint with the white, or we use the white small ceramic tiles and then we put it across that to enhance the reflectivity, but cooling the temperature in the buildings and in the rooms and homes and other places. So that also helps us into this. There are several aspects of putting into. Yes, one is also the permeable pavement, which as per the photograph design, like you have not paved with total stone, but you keep certain spaces between that. And so what we can have is the kind of uh, green space, and the water gets inside and all. Misting is not actually for us to uh, take into consideration, because it is a water intensive things and we are getting into that. The last one what I want to tell you is the concrete road and asphalt road. Many larger cities are now converting that asphalt road to the concrete road, and now concrete roads are also uh, uh, helping in reduction of the temperature, which is already uh, tested and already been into the thing. So there are 12 of the or 15 stretches in the city which are getting onto that along with the plantations. So let's hope that the cities like Ahmedabad, smaller cities also can go with respect to a kind of benefits of getting those aspect of that. So there are certain things which we can talk and discuss about it, but at this moment let me just stop sharing and we can have certain discussion, and at that point of time I would able to give you more concrete understanding or the detailed plans of that if time requires, time permits, then we can go ahead and trying to see that how exactly we can implement this thing into certain streets of our small or medium towns, and how what are the agencies can help us in doing that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that wonderful presentation and for a very comprehensive understanding. I think one major thing that you talked about is that it is essential to understand that what we are trying to understand. And when we started looking at this vast field of urban heat, even though at the surface of it, it looks like it would be something that may not have so many dimensions. But once we started looking at it, the amount of data, the amount of methods that go behind understanding it, the kind of technical expertise that is required just to understand how to calculate and how to project, I think it's very important to have all these tools. And I was looking at Telangana cool roof policy, and one of the things that it talks about is the amount of total uh, surface area that needs to be cooled in terms of the roofs. So I think what research helps in doing is identifying some questions that we don't have answers to. So I couldn't find any other state in India which has this aggregate number of total amount of roofs in square kilometers which needs to be cooled. Because if you have a data point to understand the quantum of the effort that you need to do. And with that, I will invite Ms. Neetu Jain, who's been a practitioner and who's actually been involved in creating, manufacturing many such cool roof solutions, and her portfolio of work goes beyond that. And I invite you, Neetu Jain, to please share from your work experience, to share some of the insight that you have had in mitigating heat, in understanding this interaction of heat with cities. And we also have Vivek who is now joined us. So after that, we'll have Vivek also, who's been working on implementing some of these solutions in Bhuj and Coimbatore. So over to you, Neetu.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. And it's my pleasure to be here, Tarunji, and thanks a lot for giving this opportunity. Anjana ma'am, your presentation was very good. And like we have been looking forward to many of the like solutions exactly that you have been telling. And what I realize is like many people are working in this direction, but everyone is working with their own pace, with their own setup. and the connection is missing. So exactly, probably I'll be talking a few of the points what Anjana ma'am has already spoke about, but maybe in a very simplified language and in a way like just touching if like how exactly we can relate it to the layman and how exactly we can relate it to the very basics. So I'll just share the slide. Just a minute. So exactly as I was introduced, I'm like a managing director and founder for Panache Green Tech Solutions Private Limited, and we exactly aim to create cool green cities. So exactly, our value proposition is that at Panache we are committed to craft reliable solar reflective coatings, thermal insulation products, and waterproofing solutions with a focus on trust and reliability. We aim to transform every built structure into a cool, heat-proof, energy-efficient, and watertight space. Through continuous innovation, we create products that enhance urban living, making cities cooler, greener, and more sustainable. So, in this journey of mine, I am today chairperson for Indian Green Building Council, and I'm a educator for CRRC, that is School Roof Rating Council. This is an organization in US, and which is exactly a non-profit organization. And at Panache, we are also founding members with them for their wall programs. CRRC is basically a rating agency that also like makes all the ASTM and all the research is being done for these reflective coatings and reflective solutions. I'm management committee member for Federation of Gujarat Industries. So, taking my journey ahead, I have been into association with CII, GRIHA, IGBC, Warehousing Association of India, Rotary, and all those things. And I was privileged to be share the dais with ministers and the dignitaries to release this policy of cool roof. And my contribution was in such a way that, like before establishing this policy, we have been participating into the research projects that were done by BEE and like other places also in Telangana. And recently, like we were awarded this Vishwakarma Awards for this like initiations that we have done. So definitely, like Anjana ma'am said, that when we are talking about the heat, so I remember my days when I started my journey. So I was coordinating and communicating to each and every architect because when I started, like I was my actually like very few connects I was knowing because I was not from this field of industry of this architects and building material. So whenever I have been coordinating with any of the architect or any of the end user and telling them about like these are the coatings or whatever the solution I was having, so it can reduce your heat indoors and it can give you energy efficiency. So probably not a single person was open for this type of like proposal. So water leakage was one of the concern that was there. So I remember when like this heat on the horizon and rising temperature now is being talked about, when cool roof policy is talked about. So it seems that the efforts that I have been putting just to bringing in this issue. So now it is exactly people are getting aware. So like you know, like in India and everywhere exactly. When it is raining, then only like we think about the umbrellas. So the preventive things are not being done as of now. So like when this topic was there, this topic is definitely very close to my heart. So now exactly we already know that global challenge is the increasing temperature. thermal discomfort, increased electricity bill, and like increased emissions is one of the global challenges. And the thermal discomfort, health issues, death rates are the major concerns these days. And we already know that 1.2 billion people are affected by almost 3 degrees centigrade of temperature because of this end of the century. And we already know that Mumbai also has been into this hotspot of like heat hotspot. So there are many consequences of this rising temperature. Some of the research studies say that if 1 degree temperature is increased, factory output is dipped by 2%. The working day hours are reduced. So I'll be talking more of the commercial side and this solution exactly what we are talking about. So the in if we talk about in a very simplified language, the building actually when gets heated up, it keeps on releasing heat till midnight, and that is exactly like almost 25% of population is living under metal sheets and without AC. So 25 to 50% are living without AC. So in this rising temperature, it becomes very difficult for people to survive, and heat distress is one of the major issues. And insomnia is there because of the heat. And because of the insomnia, psychological issues are there, heat strokes are there, dehydration and other health impacts are there. So what exactly is causing heat? So I would just like to focus on that. So one is the urbanization and concrete jungles that are being made. Deforestation definitely is one of the uh, area that is causing the heat. But urbanization and concrete jungles are one of the major aspect that I would like to touch. So because of the urbanization, the major issues is the structure that we are making is of concrete and of metal. So, but if we talk about the metal surface temperature and the concrete temperature, if the atmospheric temperature is 40, the surface temperature goes up to 80 into metal structures, and it goes up to 70-degree surface temperature if we talk about the concrete structure. So we have identified a very basic concept that everything that is exposed to sun gets heated up. So whenever anything gets heated up, if the surface temperature increases is more higher, is quite higher than what the atmospheric temperature is. If the weather temperature shows you 40 degree, the surface temperature shows to approximately 70 degree. So our belief is that when we are going for dense infrastructure built up, the heat gets trapped at two levels. One is at the surface level, and this heat between the buildings get trapped up, and heat is there. Another is when we are talking about the infrastructure development, the building structure the build structure surface temperature gets heated up to 70 to 80 degrees centigrade, and this heat exactly is emitted into the atmosphere, and at the top it forms a canopy of heat. And when this heat canopy is formed, the other gases are not being passed above this, the heat canopy. And this pressurizes the heat again into the city. And when heat is more into the building, the AC requirement is increased. The compressor exactly throws hot air. And this vicious cycles actually is there. Though the buildings are getting heated up, we are cooling down the buildings, the again heat is being emitted, and again like a canopy of heat is formed, and this exactly cause a vicious cycle, and this is exactly causing urban heat island impact. And this urban heat island impact exactly can be seen like in recently in Rajkot. ICLE has done a study, and it was studied that the urban heat island, like as madam said, that the building, the urban structure shows increased temperature till midnight. And thus, this is very visible that these buildings that we are making, many strategies are there, but the surface temperature of the building exactly is showing a lot of heat emission into the atmosphere, and that is exactly impacting the city temperature. And what we have observed is that whenever we are talking about energy efficiency, we talk about either thermal insulation, that is either under deck or above deck. Second strategy that we use is of landscaping or forestation. Third strategy that we are using is either doing solar generation. And fourth is energy efficient equipments. So in all these equipment and all these strategies, one thing is there that heat is built up. The buildings are getting heated up, the building envelope is getting heated up, and then we are reducing the transmittance of the heat. When we talk about thermal insulation, so our building envelope is getting heated up, and then we are reducing its transmittance. When we are talking about energy efficient equipment, our buildings are getting heated up, a heat ingress is there, and then we are using energy efficient equipment, whether it is inverter based AC or we are using any other mode. When we are talking about solar generation, again our building are getting heated up, and then we are combating the electricity uses by solar generation. There is no strategy wherein we are using so that our building doesn't get heated up. So when our buildings are exposed to solar radiation, our buildings are getting heated up, and we are not addressing that. We are addressing after the buildings are getting heated up. So this is the point wherein I want to bring in focus. Many strategies have to be used, but we have to, first step is like how we can reduce the heating up of buildings, because that is the source of heat generation. So if we talk about that, the buildings are when solar exposure is there. So from solar power distribution, three types of radiations are coming: UV radiation, visible spectrum, and the IR spectrum is there. IR radiations are there. So normally, if we talk about that, IR radiations are responsible to generate heat. So when IR radiations are reflected to any of are striking any of the surface, the radiation energy converts into heat energy. And when heat energy is there, though as per the conductivity of the building structure, the building gets heated up. So that is why under sun, anything that comes, it gets heated up. So when our buildings are exposed, the concrete structure gets heated up to 70 degrees centigrade. The metal structure gets heated up to 80 degrees centigrade into peak summer hours. So when this roof are getting heated up, the heat ingress is there, the indoor temperature is increased. And if it is AC premises, AC usage is increased, and thus electricity bills are increased, and all the consequences are there. And if it is not an AC building, the thermal discomfort is there, and all the consequences of because of the thermal discomfort are there. So if we reflect these radiations that were being converted into heat energy, so what if we can reflect that? So these cool roofs is the technology that reflects almost 89 to 90% of these radiations that were converting into heat energy. And when those radiations are reflected back, obviously the heat generation is not there, because only 5 to 10% radiation is there that is being absorbed by any of the substrate and converted into heat energy. And thus we can see the reduction of the surface temperature. So almost we have observed, at times we have observed 28 degrees centigrade of temperature difference at the surface level. So we have observed 15 to 28 degrees centigrade temperature difference is there on the surface level. And when surface level is reduced up to 20 degrees centigrade, the indoor temperature difference that has been observed is almost 4 to 8 degrees centigrade of temperature difference. If we talk about a normal paint and a cooling paint, so we can see that it should show difference reflectivity into the IR spectrum. So this is the very basic identity that, like, if it is a cooling paint, it will show reflectivity into the IR spectrum, and it will not show reflectivity into only into the visible spectrum. But if it is a non-cooling paint, a normal paint, it will show reflectivity into the visible spectrum, and it will not show reflectivity into the IR spectrum. This pink color is of normal paint, and the other graph that you can see is of cooling paint. So this is, and that is why exactly bringing this concept in, like we have three areas wherein we are working: solar reflective coatings, and that is for every type of built structures, roof, walls and roads. Then thermal insulation, that is for roof and wall. Then for the waterproofing also. So if we talk about the roof coating, it can be done on the metal surface, it can be done on cemented roof, it can be like used coating can be done, and also tiles can be used for reflective. If we talk about coating system, there are two type of variants. One is the premium system that has life of more than 8 years, and one is the affordable one that is like a paint. But when we talk about this, we need to see that sustainable performance is one of the criteria that has to be taken care of. So when it is a premium system, it is as per the primer is there, a reflective coating is there, and then transparent protective coating is there that increases its life. But when it is a normal paint, so it has this sustainable performance challenge wherein blistering and peeling off is one of the criteria. So if we talk about the premium system, its age SRI is almost 75 after 4 years also. And the criteria that is considered is that it should be SRI value should be more than 100. So to identify a good cool roof, it's important that we see the SRI value, which has to be more than 100. It should show more of the reflectivity, that is solar reflectance should be more than 89%. Another feature is it should have high emittance, that is the absorbed heat should be released very fast so that the midnight release of heat is not there, and your surface should cool down very fast. So these three criteria is there, and the established facts and the benefits of using a cool roof is it reduces the AC requirement, electricity cost is reduced by 30%, insulation requirement is reduced by 20%, occupant thermal comfort is increased by 50%, labor productivity is increased, and solar panel efficiency. If it is a bifacial solar cells, the efficiency is increased by almost 15%. So if there are case studies wherein if it is applied at the mass level, the city temperature can be reduced by 2 to 3 degrees centigrade. The UHI impacts can be reduced, and the offset only 1,000 square feet of area if it is applied. Just a minute. If only 1,000 square feet of area is covered by cool roof, almost 10 metric tons of carbon dioxide can be offset, and it improves the air quality. There are some case studies wherein like almost 8 degree of temperature difference has been observed in this one company, that is Vimal Agro. This is the case study of IGPC headquarters Hyderabad, wherein in bifacial solar cells where this coating was applied, almost 15% of energy efficiency was observed. These are certain other projects. Every type of substrate this coating can be applied, and this is a very simple logic that if surface temperature, presently we are always considered that an inner temperature should be reduced, but we just want to stress out that the surface temperature has to reduce, because if this temperature will be reduced, the heat emitting into the atmosphere will be reduced, and indoor obviously you will be getting temperature difference because the skin of the built structure is being reduced, temperature is reduced. So it gives very good benefit and like thermal comfort when it is in combination with any of the like exhaust structure, wherein like an indoor hot air being exhausted outside, it can be applied on any type of material. This is a very simple case study that was done by Taru. I'll just move it fast. First, the surface has to be made, surface application has to be done, and then this first primer coat has to be applied. This is the ceramic coat, and it has a property of very strong bonding. Then elastomeric coat has to be applied. This is an emulsion elastomeric coat so that it can mitigate the expansion and contraction also. And after that, transparent coating is applied. My presentation is visible now.
Yes.
This is another site.
Is this a warehouse or factory?
This was exactly a play area, wherein it was like a mini playing, it was a play group, play. You can say like for small children, wherein like bumping and everything happens. So
Yeah.
they have exactly worked out with the insulation, thermal insulation. Also, they have applied. They have applied. Installed these turbo ventilators also. They have installed fans also, but they were not feeling comfortable. Thermal comfort was not there. So like after applying this coating, they are quite comfortable. I just want to communicate this thing, that it's very important that we work on the surface temperature, because like ma'am has said that if we apply solar panels, then also we exactly get temperature difference. Okay, indoor temperature difference. But in that, what is happening, our glasses are getting heated up. So when we are talking about urban heat island impact, so indoor temperature difference definitely is one of the area that we can look about. But it's very important that we do not contribute heat to the atmosphere or to the city. That is also very important. So for every build structure, these type of things can be there, like tiles are there, for walls are there. Wall, we can have these cooling paints with very pastel color shades. The technology remains the same. The IR radiations are reflected back. It is same as paint and with very good weather resistance. Then for the pavements and cycle tracks and roadways also, these type of coatings are there. And the NASA document says that if we apply this coating on the road, the surrounding temperature area also can be reduced. So like different type of material can be used for these roofs. And this is the live case study where in Spain, in Almeria, 1.2 degrees centigrade has been reduced in 20 years. This is Almeria in Spain, where mass application of the school roof is being done. This is in Greece, that is being done. This is the policy exactly that says that makes mandate the commercial building and the government building. It is optional for the residential buildings, but for the government and commercial buildings, it is mandated. In ECBC, Energy Conservation Building Code now has been transferred to Energy Conservation Sustainability Building Code, and there also it is being mandated to have these cool roof. So the cool roof policy, if we see, it is adoption of cool roof as a measure of building resilience against extreme heat. And its objective is how we can have a
Neetaji.
mass application of cool roof. So these are certain points that are for the cool roof policy. And with this policy, we aim to be an eco-friendly state with reduced dependence on energy consumption for cooling. So these are different strategies.
Yeah, thanks so much. It is really, I think, the examples that you used from multiple smaller city context and the beauty of putting some very simple solutions in just one house, and if multiple houses in a community can adopt such solutions, the overall temperature decrease that is possible across communities and cities is quite phenomenal. So thanks again for your presentation. Of course, the ramifications are much larger, and I would now invite Vivek. I know that we are a little behind time, but I hope that if time permits to all our participants and panelists, if they can extend it by a few minutes so that we can have the presentation and initial comments from Vivek, as well as a short round of one question each to our panelists at the end. So Vivek, over to you. And I hope we can try to.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm in a bit of a noisy kind of. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was at a press conference somewhere close by in Mumbai, and I only have about 10 minutes. Sorry, I need to catch a train to head back. Yes. So our view on the subject of heat is from the ground. We've been working in the specific area of bridging the gap between knowledge and application. We found in our work, working with the world, that there's the application with the well-being of the already protected classes in our society, whereas the most vulnerable, who are the victims of climate injustice, are left to sort of fend for themselves. And we recognize this inequity, this interest in the formal built world, and the relatively meager amount of interest in the informal settlements that are suffering the worst of the heat issue. Some of the panelists have spoken of the abuse of sleeping pills. This is something we got to know a few years ago, that women who are domestic workers in most cities have sleeping pills through the entire summer in Pune. The humanitarian crisis in terms of the kind of health impacts, the kind of psychological impacts endured by vulnerable classes of our communities. Let me just get right to it.
Yeah.
Right. So we started working on this issue about 4 years ago, where we started applying the knowledge that we have from the formal built world, but working with communities to unpack these ideas and develop solutions through participatory processes with primarily women dwellers in informal settlements. Yeah. So I'm going to go right into what the solutions look like right now. I'm not going to get to what the situation is. We are already well aware of the emergency that we are currently confronted with, the urgency of the change required. I'll just briefly talk about the theory of change. We are working at full scale in informal homes. These are tin sheet, asbestos sheet homes, which have very little protection, like we all know about. The idea is to eventually revitalize local economic production of these solutions. For us, it would be a travesty if the outcome of these kinds of processes was the creation of another technological fetish, where we again are dependent on large manufacturers of products and services, which very often do not lead to economic revitalization of the of the skills, of the know-how, of the intelligence, and the economic resilience of the communities. A vital that we are foregrounding in our work is to see if women's cooperatives can eventually take on the production, maintenance, and the economic activities that surround the whole political economy of heat abatement. So we've drawn inspiration from the Barefoot College model of Bankar Roy, for example, that a lot of us might know, which honors the intelligence and capacities of people who are otherwise disparaged or dismissed as uneducated populations. Our goal eventually is to see if, in addition to policy support through, for example, utilities, that can see heat avoidance and air conditioning energy avoidance as a demand side management program. That is a very vital policy lever that we could leverage. For example, like the Bachar Famp Yojana, imagine if we were able to prove to a utility that saving heat or reducing heat ingress, like the presenter right before me mentioned, can actually lead to savings in terms of air conditioning energy, which will inevitably need to be paid on humanitarian grounds. A lot of informal settlements. If we can look at the benefit of doing preventive action rather than providing a whole, an inordinate amount of energy at subsidized rates, because it will be required to prevent mass die-offs during heat waves. Instead of reacting, then we could be spending a fraction of the amount to weatherproof the roofs in multiple ways. One other thing I would like to share with you before I get started is that we believe that there are many processes through which heat comes in and can be addressed in a proactive manner. At the beginning of pipe, like the presenter before said, that rather than letting the structure get heated and then reacting to that situation, we can look at many other processes to reduce the heat. While reflection is great, reflection also has the other challenges of not being viable with a burden in terms of pollution or a lot of animal activity. So one of the first things that we encountered when we did the participatory process is when we asked, what do you all think about these reflectors? Most of these slum dwellers in the 6 cities we've been working, they would ask us things like, how does to do with deposition of animal, excreta, which is very rampant on these rooftops. How will it perform in the case where they need to use the rooftop for clothing, for example? And another very interesting thing that the community members asked us during our participatory workshops. So whether what we present the prototype models of our solutions just as a prompt, but the whole point is to ask basically critique this with complete freedom. Without feeling that, just because we have come into their space that they're obliged to take our solutions. So we believe in this, that unless a community can say thanks, but no thanks, we should not be doing any development. They should have the right to reject the idea as well. So whenever we would ask them about these white paints, they felt that, okay, it has a limited efficacy, but for example, if sleep was a big concern, perhaps a lot of us know this, that one of the reasons why sleep is greatly deprived during summer and monsoons in Indian informal settlements is the sound of the rain. If any one of us has tried to sleep under a rain sheet roof in the rains, we know that even if it's cool, you cannot sleep because of the sound. It sounds like somebody's attacking your home. And found is a lot of the solutions that haven't been created through dialogical processes often miss these very vital well-being related elements. So the how of what we are doing is I think, as vital as the what. And rather than showing you pictures, what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you a small video, which actually shows you the dynamic nature of some of these solutions. And then I'll talk about the principles that are behind this. But Tarun, can you let me know if you can see the screen?
Yes, it's visible. It's a photo of the chain sprocket right now, but it doesn't have the video yet.
Yes, it's going to show up.
Sure.
And I'll be pausing every now and then. Okay, so one thing I would like us to notice here is, contrary to most ideas about reflection, what we found is that a low emissivity surface pointing downwards, which means pointing towards the occupant roof, is far more essential than having a reflective surface, because the top surface reflection will be lost within a few days of deposition of pollution. And once that darkened surface gets hot, it will radiate all the heat downwards. It will make an ounce of difference once you have lost your reflection. However, a low emissivity surface, no matter how hot it gets, will not radiate because the emissivity of this is 0.05. This is a simple material called alufoil, by the way, which we are now fabricating using discarded MLP waste from potato chip packets by working with groups that are doing a lot of diversion of MLP from landfills. Yeah. So you must be also wondering, why are we opening this up and closing this second layer? What we found very earlier on in our testing was shading the roof in the daytime is very good. But if you do not allow the night sky radiation to happen, then a lot of that heat that is generated from within and still comes in from the walls and from the outside, it cannot escape. Yeah, so that's why opening this up is very important. And by the way, this is an example on top of an Anganwadi school in Chennai, in Coimbatore. However, we've even done this on tin sheet roofs, and I can show you a video about that later. This is the same idea of an alufoil, and this is on top of a slum in Mumbai near Lilavati Hospital in a community called Lal Matti. And this is a mechanism where it slides on and off using like a pipe motor mechanism. So it's almost like a curtain, like a horizontal curtain. This is the same thing over a center in Coimbatore. Again, the below is the emissivity, though the low emissivity surface is stuck at the bottom. So even if it's not hot, it will radiate basically zero heat to the floor below. In places where you cannot do external things because of the fact that there are high tension cables away, in the way, or there's a lot of other hazards, etc. Access is challenging. You can at least do a zero emissivity film or a layer underneath the metal roof, even though this has the disadvantage that in the nighttime, residents do say that it feels even more than usual because the heat also cannot escape. So this is, I would say, a middle path solution if you cannot do something on the outside. This is just an example. This is a system, an awning mechanism using a lever, which you often see on the street side. If you have a Panpuri person, they will have an awning during the rainfall season. This is that mechanism, and you can see this is within 3 days of installation. Anybody who thinks that you can have a reflective surface that will last for a long time in an informal settlement, this is just an example of what you're confronted with.
Vivek sir, can you
As you
please
can see, this technology. Yeah.
What is the material? Alufoil is what?
Alufoil is cross-linked polyethylene, basically. It's the same as you. Now we are in the process of using gunny bags with MLP stuck on both sides to replace this, because this is also an industrially made product. It's very cheap. It's about 20 rupees. Installed is about 20 rupees a square foot. So you can get a 200 square foot home done for about 6,000 rupees. But it's still a dependence on industry. We are trying to see if we can make this, using mass-based materials, including coconut leaves, etc., as the base, and then covering it on both sides with MLP. The key principle in all of this is to try and see as much of this being fabricated locally using local talent, and getting a lot of meaningful livelihood, where the people are also designers. They're not just fabricators, they're designing these solutions. This is an idea that we have been working on with Mahila Housing Seva Trust in Ahmedabad called the dormer window. As we know, there is ventilation, insulation, shading, thermal mass, all these beneficial processes in addition to action. There is usually no scope for cross ventilation. The only hope is vertical ventilation, which is stack ventilation. Yeah, and this is an example of what we've developed here to promote light ingress for natural lighting and for allowing the hot air, especially from cooking, etc., to also escape. Now, this is a rooftop again of an informal settlement home in Mumbai near Leelavati Hospital. These boards are basically what's called eco boards. This is compressed Tetra Pak. The benefit of this is that it is also a great place, a way to waterproof surface in a way to reduce the amount of sound also that the rain makes during monsoons, heavy monsoon periods. And the entire mechanism operates using a very innovative system using bicycle chains. And I'll show you in operation in a second. This is the same material on top of a school in Coimbatore. So do you see that in the daytime you would cover it completely, and then using a simple lever near the house, make it vertical in the night so that as much of the heat that is on the roof can escape the night sky. So this is the mechanism we created. This is the house, and the person from inside can very simply pull this lever, and with this they can open and close the rooftop. And this solution is called about a 6 to 8 degree temperature drop between day 1 and day 2 using locally fabricated materials. This is not used moving back. Eco board applied static on top of the roof. This is in a landfill near Bhalaswa in Delhi. Again, the principle is not really reflection. Below this is a low emissivity film to reduce the amount of emissive radiation. The idea was this: what is the cheapest and most feasible way to get thermal mass out of a communities where recyclers who do a lot of the waste management of our cities where they live and have access to a lot of these discarded materials. So this is just the initial idea. Now we evolved to many ages beyond this, where we are using, for example, cow dung plaster to cover these bottles as well. Like I said, we are now moved to a situation where we can install entire crates. So imagine like a crate of discarded plastic Bisleri bottles filled with water, right? It does not even need to be clean water. On these rooftops with some support below, so that you add a lot of thermal mass very cheaply. And this is our favorite and the most effective solution that we've seen till now is basically rooftop gunning, but not just putting the creeper on top. I wanted to show you the most stunning image that indicates what the power of this solution is. 1 second. Roof in Pune about 8 months after installation. They're growing Loki, they're growing brinjal, they're growing papri, which is a very well-known bean kind of vegetable. And about 20% of their daily vegetable needs or weekly vegetable needs are being met through this roof.
Amazing.
And this is led to about an 8 degree temperature drop. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Amazing. This is Pune.
Pune, that was Pune. Yeah, this is Chennai. And that's it. I will stop sharing my screen now because I don't think we need to see much more data, etc. I've shown you the solutions that we are working with, and that's about it.
Great. Thanks so much. I think the proof is in the pudding, and I think from the multiple presentations, and especially the one that we just saw in so many different city contexts, we can see the vast amount of change that these very organically grown solutions, community-driven solutions can do to mitigate urban heat. And I know that we didn't get enough time to hear from you, Vivek, but thanks so much for that lovely presentation and for showing that how when you involve communities and when you make solutions that come from the ground wisdom, how apt they are to the context and how apt they are to solve the real problems, what you said, the obvious ones, how people need to address the lived experience in day-to-day living, like when they sleep, how they wake up, and the realities of daily life. I think they need to be integrated, and that's a presentation which captured it beautifully. So thanks again, Vivek. And I think we run out of time to have a one-on-one ask questions, but I think I would like to close with the hope that this is not just a panel discussion, because with the Nagrikal series, what we're trying to do is ask questions, identify areas of research and understanding and peer learning, which can create pathways to create solutions which are useful to smaller cities. We already saw from the three examples, from the three presentations, the potential there exists. And I think one of the panelists talked about it, that sometimes it is not interconnected, the approaches. Sometimes we're trying to solve the same problem using different solutions, but are there ways in which some of these solutions can be integrated? And a big part of the agenda of change, or the area of further inquiry that we're trying to create, is identify the role for communities and role of citizens in creating these solutions. And I hope that as we move forward from this vast wisdom that we have in the panel and in the various actors and institutions that are already working in smaller cities, we can continue to build on this body of knowledge. There are multiple research strands and multiple practice strands that we want to answer. That what role can local communities play in planning and implementation, and how can data geomatics be integrated in urban planning? How can availability of localized data be increased, and is there a role of communities there? And more importantly, also, how can awareness of citizens in smaller cities be enhanced about a lot of these phenomena that is happening around the cities? And we will be in touch with all of you. We will share the link for the report also shortly after we finish the presentation. And I think Anita has already shared a feedback form, so it'll be wonderful if the participants can share their feedback so that the next one we can try to improve upon.
To say thank you to all the panelists for their wonderful and very informative presentations. We do have, and thank you so much to all the people who have stayed. We are about 20 minutes above time. If we could take 1 minute, I think the team has worked hard on this report, and if we can take 1 minute to do a kind of ceremonial launch of opening the curtain on the report. So these are the two reports that we talked about. One is more broad-based and kind of contextualizes smaller cities in climate change, like we discussed, and the second one more pertinent to today's conversation and rise in temperature and heat waves in small and mid-sized cities. For all of you, we will share the link. It will be shortly up on the website. And if you have feedback, comments, please reach out to us. We'd be very, very happy to hear. It's like Tarun said, it's a learning experience for all of us. And we've learned already so much from this conversation. And we hope we can continue learning from everyone as we build on this work. Over to you, Tarun. Thank you, Nimisha.
Heartily congratulations for launch of these documents. Well done.
Thanks so much, ma'am.
For reading that. Thank you.
Yes. And we look forward to your feedback and comments, ma'am. And thanks again, Vivek. Thanks, Nituji. And
congratulations, Nagrikal team.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Sorry about the rushed.
No issues. We hope that we continue to build on this conversation which you started, and try to expand onto this body of knowledge that we started creating. And the amount of, I think, implications that it has for smaller cities are immense. And we're just starting right now. I think it's just the beginning. So thanks again for taking out time from your really busy schedules and giving it to us and sharing your wisdom with us. So thanks again, and have a good evening, everyone. And thanks to the audience as well for staying and being part of this discussion.